Hi, thank you so much for joining the webinar today. I'm Carrie Blazer, and today we're going to do a deep dive in how you can remove your internal roadblocks and transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom with 6 free do-it-yourself trauma healing techniques. So you can learn how to heal your own emotional pain without depending on therapy and without outsourcing your sovereignty. So let's get going. And to be successful today, please be sure you have water, a drink, a notebook, paper, pen or a pencil, and a mirror or a phone, because we're going to get into a Carl Jung exercise for self-reflection. Before we begin, let's go over 3 agreements. Number 1, this work requires presence. Not multitasking, not passive listening, because you're worth it. When I learned to prioritize my own self-love, by that I mean healthy diet, healthy exercise, time to rest, that's when I saw the change. But when I put myself last, I stayed stuck. So let's learn how we can put ourselves first today in a healthy way. Agreement 2. You take accountability for your problems in order to transform your own life. If you have a victim mindset, this is not the place for you. If you're ready to take accountability and say, how can I change myself and then in turn change my reality? Today I'm going to teach you how. Agreement number 3, you are not a victim. You take responsibility for your emotions. And one thing I learned over the past 10 years healing from my own traumatic childhood is that if I don't like my life, I have to file a grievance with my soul, because my soul plans my life based on my wounds for self-improvement opportunities. So all of my challenges, my soul planned for me. So how can I be a victim? Today, what's important? This training works best when you take notes, stay engaged, ask real questions. Breakthrough context. I don't heal people. I teach people how to heal themselves. I teach people how to transform their emotional wounds into personal wisdom. I used to have problems apologizing. I'm 55 now. So about 8 years ago, I had to learn how to apologize because I never learned as a child, which is a healthy activity to be able to engage in. So I teach people how to heal themselves. I will teach you how to transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom. I had a wound that I feared all men. So every time I went out in society, I was super anxious for the vast majority of my life. Today, I'm going to share how I transformed that wound, fear all men, into the wisdom is men protect me. And this distinction changes everything. When I took responsibility for my challenges, and I took accountability for the reason why I had so many failed relationships, that's when my whole world started to change. So I'm going to teach you how to do that yourself today. So the quick question in the chat, true or false? I am done circling the same internal patterns. I'm ready to resolve them. Is that you? Is that what you've been going through? Because that was my whole life. I had failed relationship after failed relationship after failed relationship. And only when I took responsibility for that did I start to change. We hear so many women say, why are all men narcissists? Well, the question is, girlfriend, why are all the men that you attract into your life narcissists? When I took responsibility for that, because I used to attract players and avoidant men, and we'll get into that, I'll share my story. Then and only then, my life started to change. I realized I'm the common denominator here. So if I change the common denominator, then I can start to change my life. So if you type true, this is the training for you. You have sovereignty over yourself. You can take responsibility for that and see how powerful you are as a soul having a human experience. But before we go any further, why you can trust this work. I did it myself first. 10 years ago, My mom passed away on my 45th birthday, June 25th, 2015. And the hospital called me and told me what happened, and I went right back to sleep. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning when they called. And my mom came to me in a dream and thanked me for everything that I had done. I brought her back from Florida to California so she could see all of her family and she could have those last few weeks with her family. And I didn't put any tubes in her. I did it exactly how she wanted. And then when I woke up in the morning, my intuition guided me that it was time to accept my psychic gifts and it was time to heal from my childhood trauma, because on that day, that was a day I became the matriarch of my family. I was no longer in my mom's heart. She was an alcoholic and had never healed from her childhood trauma. She used shame, guilt, and fear to control people, and she never taught me how to apologize. So I needed 2 more years of work before I could even learn how to apologize. So that was in 2015. In 2019, I attempted suicide. And through my healing, I dove in even deeper. I'm like, this isn't happening again. I pulled out all my shamanic gifts and experienced enlightenment all in just 5 years. So today I'm going to weave in my story into all of the science, the neurology, the psychology, the cardiology, all of this multidisciplinary approach that I take. And so I will weave in my stories to see how it worked for me. And then you can reflect on how this wisdom and knowledge can work for you. My core insight: you are a soul operating a nervous system. And we're going to rely on an Albert Einstein quote to show us how that happens. And what I had to learn is, if you don't know how to operate it, like operate your soul will operate you. So in my soul, I had fear of all men. I had a fear that if I apologize, my loved ones will leave me. Both are not logical, but both ran my nervous system into the ground. And we'll start with the older one. When I found that inside of my soul, in my subconscious, was fear all men. And then the next day I went to visit my older daughter at a market because she had a jewelry business at the time. And I spent every Saturday with her at this jewelry business in these markets. And she's my daughter, so she knew how anxious I normally was in public. I walked up to her booth and she noticed instantly, "Mom, what's up? Mom, you changed. What happened?" I'm like, "Oh, I had a fear all men in my subconscious and my soul, and I turned it into men protect me, so I'm not anxious anymore." She's like, "Go, Mom." But she knew immediately, and I knew immediately. And that's the power of it. My soul was operating me because I lacked self-awareness. When I learned to operate my soul, transform my emotional wounds into personal wisdom, and I was operating my soul, then I was a whole other person. And my loved ones noticed immediately. It's wonderful. So let's be honest about today. Today, I'm going to share my multidisciplinary sources of wisdom and knowledge, and we'll get to that in a second. And we'll do a deep dive into how I healed from my childhood trauma. I'll share stories as necessary as real-life examples so you can see how this works. Explain how to implement my self-love strategies into your life, the free ebook you got when you signed up for the webinar. Reveal my recommendations for other DIY trauma healing techniques. And if you would like more assistance healing trauma or with enlightenment, I'm an enlightenment coach as well. I will discuss how to work with me privately at the end of the webinar. So here's what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over my 6 Divine Feminine Self-Love Strategies, the free ebook, and how you can implement those into your life. My recommendations for daily healing about meditation, nature therapy, and such. We'll go over my YouTube channel, other free resource for you. I have a meditation and shamanic drumming video. I go over all my trauma healing techniques. I have a weekly webinar I'm going to be starting this week. We'll go over all of that. We'll go over Carl Jung's mirror exercise, another free technique that you can do at home. That you do not have to rely on therapy and all the money that you're spending on therapy. A Lakota star feeding technique where Johns Hopkins did a ton of research and found out that this technique heals trauma 6 times faster than talk therapy alone. And then we'll go over the other professionals that I recommend. So my multidisciplinary sources of wisdom and knowledge, my intuition, psychology, a lot of Carl Jung. I love Carl Jung. My maiden name is Swiss German, and his whole family is psychic, and he's Swiss German, and my family's psychic. So a lot of signs and synchronicities there for me. Cardiology. Today we're going to learn how the heart is a vortex. Fascinating. Neuroscience, shamanism, laws of physics. Why laws of physics? Physicists have proven that we all have energy bodies or souls. So how do we understand how energy works? Laws of physics. Mysticism, family medicine, Dr. Gabor Mate, and epigenetics. Epi meaning before. So what happens before genetics? And let's start with shamanism and the dedication in my book. So my book is My Inner Heroine, Exploring Feminine Pain. And because of my traumatic childhood, I spent most of my life in my masculine. I did not know how to be a healthy feminine woman. And I needed to reparent myself, as we so often hear when we talk about psychology. And so to reparent myself, I had to figure out, well, what is a healthy feminine woman? And this Cherokee proverb came back to me time and time again. And it really helped me understand why I had attracted men into my life during my healing journey and why I had focused on communicating with their souls so much. So the dedication is, a woman's highest calling is to lead a man to his soul so as to unite him with Source or God. A man's highest calling is to protect a woman so she is free to walk the earth unharmed. Women do the inside work, men do the outside work. And when I understand my role as the inside work, the compassion, the nurturing, the creativity, the intuition, the forgiveness, then I'm a much healthy feminine woman. I can sleep at night. I'm not anxious all the time. I have healthy relationships. I know my lane. But when I was a child, I didn't understand my lane. And I was in the masculine lane my whole life. And because more on shamanism. And this is in the last chapter of my book. So how my book is organized, it starts 10 years ago on my 45th birthday. And I quickly go to my suicide attempt 3 years later. And then the healing that happened afterwards. So I attempted suicide, and then I did a deep dive into healing. I did several medicine journeys with magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and then I started attracting men into my life. And why? Well, relationships are our best mirror to show us where we have room for improvement. And 3 of the guys I met at yoga. 2 of the guys I met on Instagram, and then the last guy is my guy from my childhood. And I didn't end up going on a date with any of them, but through my interactions, especially at yoga, like if he's flirting with me at yoga, but he's not asking me out, then maybe I have something to work on. And that was exactly my vibe over the past 5-6 years. And then this is another quote from shamanism. Even the box of emotional pain he left me with was a gift. The process of turning those wounds into wisdom is the gift he left me with. And that is a quote from my guy from my childhood. And I had to understand and have opportunities to learn that we live in a holographic universe, that the universe is a mirror, and how all that operates and how we can use that wisdom to help everyone heal with the mental health crisis that we're currently having. But we'll get more into that in a minute. But this is kind of like setting the scene of how I came into wanting to understand how healing works. And another piece of shamanic wisdom is when a person with anxiety went to the shaman, then the shaman would ask, when was the last time you danced, sang, or experienced joy? And this is the biggest lesson that I had to learn, is that I had taken on massive emotional wounds as a child, and my soul planned that for me. So I could, at this stage in my life, the last 10 years, turn all those wounds into wisdom and realize that because I had stayed in my fear, guilt, and shame, I hadn't danced, I hadn't sang, I hadn't experienced joy. I had attracted shameful, fearful experiences into my life to show me myself, to show me that that's inside of myself. And then once I realized, oh, that's inside of myself, and I'm the only one that has sovereignty over my own soul, well, how do I change that? Well, I start learning how to turn those wounds into wisdom. One way to do that is start engaging in healthy, joyful experiences and giving your soul an opportunity to feel that and communicate that out of your heart. And when you communicate more joy, compassion, enlightenment, song, dance out of your heart, that's when you start to recalibrate your nervous system. Because when your nervous system is calibrated for fear, guilt, and shame due to generational trauma, that's what you attract into your life to show you that your soul has so much fear, guilt, shame. But when you start to learn how to operate your soul, reprogram your soul for more joy, love, and compassion, enlightenment, and that's what comes out your heart, then that's how you'll calibrate your nervous system, and that's the healing process. So while shamanistic wisdom was before we understood the laws of physics and neurology, they knew what they were doing. And that's why I really rely on their wisdom, because this is the heart of it. When I had tons of fear, guilt, and shame in my soul for 2 years in my 40s, I'm 55 now, I couldn't even go in the sun. I couldn't go and experience the joy of the sun. I was just so inundated with my fear, guilt, and shame. And I had to learn how to transform that fear, guilt, and shame into love, compassion, and enlightenment. And that's what we're here to do today. So let's get to the laws of physics and Albert Einstein. Okay, this quote helps me understand so much. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle. The field is the energy field. The particle is the body. So in your energy field, your soul has a ton of fear, guilt, and shame, and that gets stored in your body, and you overproduce cortisol. When humans overproduce cortisol, it rises our blood sugar levels into unhealthy areas, and that drives inflammation. 90% of our diseases come from inflammation. So let's learn from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who has an incredible story of healing his own fractured spine. He's a neuroscientist, and he does a lot of work in healing trauma.
Einstein said the field, the wave, the energy is the sole governing agency of the particle. Energy controls matter. He didn't say particle controls the particle. He said the field controls the particle. If you change the information in the field, and you change the projection, the particle in three-dimensional reality, this is a holographic universe. So if the quantum field is an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses, beyond our body, our environment, and time, then the only way we're going to connect to it is take all of our attention off our body, all of our attention off the environment. What's the environment made of? People, objects, things, places, and take all of your attention off of linear time, the predictable future and the familiar past, and find the sweet spot, the generous present moment. That's the unknown. That's the door. That's the moment you become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time. That is the moment you are pure consciousness. And that is the moment you're walking through the door to the quantum field.
So the reason Dr. Joe Dispenza has us take all of our attention off of everything outside of ourselves, because when we only focus outside of ourselves, we're not focused on our own heart and our own soul. So retract everything you got going on outside of yourself and bring you back to yourself. And to do the emotional work, emotions are in the moment. So the sweet spot is in the moment, as opposed to worrying about everything outside of you. And that's how I used to be. I used to worry about everybody else and not take care of myself. But when I learned that I was projecting all of my problems onto other people by focusing outside of myself, and I withdrew all of my projections, this is Carl Jung, Then I started to process my emotional pain, turning my wounds like fear all men into wisdom, men protect me. Or if I apologize, my loved ones will leave me, turning that into the wisdom. If I apologize, my loved ones will want to stay. So I bring up the holographic universe with Joe Dispenza. And so how does this work, that we live in a holographic universe? And one of my teachings is the universe is a mirror, showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. And I came upon Dr. David R. Hawkins on the left here after I experienced enlightenment for the first time in March of 2024, just 2 years ago. And I have a master's degree in East Asian religious studies, but I studied the history, the politics, the sociology, the culture, the death rituals, funeral rituals. I wasn't there to learn about enlightenment per se. But I learned on my own about almost 30 years later. Enlightenment is an expression of our soul, and our souls express themselves through emotions. So enlightenment is an emotion, and it's this really high vibrating emotion. 700 to 1,000 hertz. And the first time I experienced it, I was in really good shape, like 20 pounds less than I am right now. Hot yoga 6 days a week. And I experienced it for 3 days and I lost 12 pounds. That's how high vibrating it was. And I had to learn that because I had spent so much time in these lower vibrating emotions, the fear, the guilt, and the shame, that kept me stuck. And I was very low vibrating, I lacked a lot of awareness. And something I've learned over the past 6 years, I haven't gotten sick in 6 years. And I did research into that and working with Dr. Gabor Mate and looking at all of his videos. He specializes in how childhood trauma impacts adults in his family medicine practice. And I came to understand that cancer, viruses, and bacteria all vibrate below 100 hertz. So if we use the Einstein quote, the field is the sole governing agency of the particle. When the field vibrates low, then the particle vibrates low. But when the field, the soul, vibrates high, so does the particle, and then you don't get sick. So this is another reason to do this work, to dive into your wounds and turn it into wisdom. And then you will over time stop getting sick. But let's learn how this works, how the universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. This is how you identify your tribe. This is how you see yourself through the people who are around you. As we see, if you're progressive, you're more likely to have progressive friends. If you're conservative, you're more likely to have conservative friends. So how does this work? All based on the laws of physics. So, let's say in my soul I have 40 hertz, and that 40 hertz is selfishness. When this 40 hertz moves, the people around me that also have 40 hertz, it will also start to move. And we'll see that happen in this physics experiment in a second. And when they move, that draws my perception, my attention, and that's how I identify my tribe. But it doesn't make it right or wrong. I mean, people used to believe that the earth was flat. But that's how your soul shows you yourself. So inside of my soul, I had wounds from other lifetimes. I had rape wounds. I had a lot of wounds from other lifetimes. And so how did my soul show that to me? When I was a teenager. And then I had to work out of it so I could stop that from happening to myself. I even attracted Andrew Tate into my life, and we'll get into that in a minute. But let's look at this physics experiment and show how it works. The first two tuning forks, one is tuned to 512 hertz and one is tuned to 440 hertz. And when the 512 moves, the 440 doesn't even notice. But in the second pair, they're both 440. So when you see the 440 move, the other one starts to move. So let's watch. So when they are the same frequency, the other one moves, pulling your perception, your attention. That's how you see yourself. I used to attract players into my life. I'm calling a spade a spade. And only on the fifth one, and it's all in my book too, did I finally see that inside of my sacral chakra, my womb, I had a wound that I am replaceable, that my femininity, my creation is replaceable, and no one's replaceable. But I needed to go to my fifth guy to finally see that I'm replaceable. And then only with my sixth guy did I see the rape wound, because that's how painful it was. That's how buried it was deep inside of me. And that's why it's taken 10 years for me to get to this point where I'm ready to share my wisdom about healing. But let's get to cardiology and neuroscience, because this goes together. And then we're going to learn how the heart is a vortex. Let's go over this first, and then we're going to see how the heart is a vortex, and which further supporting that we live in a holographic universe. And one other, I guess, DIY trauma healing technique is when you feel called to call someone else selfish or, something negative or something positive. That is your soul showing you that that is also in you. One time I was seeing a shaman, and then I'd done a lot of work on myself, and then I went to see her. And I said, "Oh, you're so bright. You're so bright." And yes, she's bright. But my soul was showing me my own brightness. When I went outside, I'm like, "Oh, I'm bright too. I've done the work too." Okay? So this is why cardiology and neuroscience, understanding this process, is so important to understanding how powerful your soul is. I mean, all of our hearts are a vortex and like a black hole creation. It's incredible. So the heart invites blood into motion through coordinated twists and releases. It creates an energetic vortex. And blood naturally flows in a spiral in embryos before the heart is formed. And Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Here's one main way we can all do that. Spiral systems adapt where linear systems break. They allow movement without rupture. It is the most energy efficient, turbulent, reducing way to move matter. Heart coherence equals a regulated nervous system. So our souls, or our energy bodies, go out about 6 meters out from us, and they come out through our hearts, our heart and our soul. And the nervous system in our soul and our heart is far more complex than our brain, and our heart sends far more signals to our brain than the other way around. So again, like epigenetics, right? So what happens before the genetics kick in? So let's say for me, fear all men. That's a lot of fear until I was 51 years old. I finally saw that inside myself. So every day my soul and my subconscious was communicating fear, fear, fear out through my heart up to my brain, releasing cortisol, over releasing cortisol. So I've craved sugar my whole life because the sugar in my blood is raised to an unhealthy level because of that overabundance of cortisol, driving my sugar addiction, and then that increases inflammation, driving disease. 90% of our diseases come from inflammation. Epigenetics has proven that less than 1% of our diseases start with genetics. Less than 1%. So by far, the vast majority come from our energy body, our soul. So let me bring up and show you these.
Probably one of the best descriptions of the heart that I've ever run across. They taught you the heart was just a glorified meat pump, and it squeezes and pushes blood like some crude mechanical device, a hydraulic engine made of flesh. That is what they want you to believe. Because if you buy into that primitive lie, you never ask deeper questions. But it is false. It has always been false. And the real science proves it. Dr. Francesco Torres, a Spanish cardiac researcher, discovered what the textbooks refuse to acknowledge, that the heart is not a pump. He dissected thousands of hearts and found that the heart is a single continuous muscle band folded into a spiral. He proved that the heart works like a vortex generator, creating suction and torque, not pressure. He called it the helical ventricular myocardial band, and it changes everything. The real movement of the blood comes from pressure differentials, electromagnetic flow, and coherent resonance. The blood spirals naturally. It need not be forced through miles of arteries and capillaries. The so-called pump is not strong enough to push thick fluid through 60,000 miles of tubing. That is basic physics. That lie was dead on arrival. Here is the truth. Blood moves before the heart forms in the embryo. That is, by the way, a documented fact. It flows via frequency, resonance, and electric charge. The body is a field, not a factory. Your heart creates a toroidal electromagnetic field that radiates 6 meters from the body. This field syncs with the earth, the sun, and every living being around you. It is a resonator, a tuner, a conductor. It aligns the rhythm of your cells. It feels, it remembers, it emits, and it responds to emotion, thought, light, sound, and breath. When you feel love, grief, fear, or peace, your heart transmits it. It is the central frequency modulator of your biology, not a pump. And the institutions know this. The Heart Math Institute has measured these fields for decades. They know the heart has more neuronal cells than parts of the brain. They know it is a second brain. They know coherence in the heart transforms the entire nervous system. So why are they still teaching children a 400-year-old guess from William Harvey that has never been updated?
That is an excellent question that I'll leave for another day. I have YouTube videos on that if you want to check it out. But this video I want to show you is about how the heart is formed. And it gets into how heart cells synchronize and come together, because heart cells don't start out all together. They're formed in different places, and then they synchronize through energetic connection, through quantum entanglements, and then they come together. It's beautiful. Let's watch it. Before the heart beats for the first time, something far greater begins to move. Long before your heart ever beat, thousands of cardiac cells made a silent decision. There was no pulse, no rhythm, no sound. In the earliest stages of development, individual heart cells begin firing electrical signals on their own. Then something remarkable happens. They synchronize. Separate impulses align into one coordinated electrical wave. That wave triggers the first contraction, the first heartbeat, the beginning of a rhythm that can last a lifetime. And so I'm going to go from this about how heart cells beat separately and then they synchronize, and how we can use this analogy to reparent ourselves and heal from our childhood trauma. Let me share how I felt my whole life until I healed. My only memory from kindergarten, this is on my website, carrieblazer.com, until the past year and a half, prior to that, was playing alone in a dark room with blocks that were on metal wire, but alone, no one there. And my whole life I've had challenges creating friendships, maintaining friendships, and I spent a lot of my time alone. And my master's degree, undergraduate and graduate degree, I lived in China, and I traveled alone in China and Tibet, and I met my ex-husband in Tibet. He's Israeli. And that's really how I felt. That's how much I rejected myself. It's like my whole heart was gone. And those parts of myself over the past 10 years, the healing process is recalling those parts and kind of synchronizing all those parts of my heart back into union, just like in the embryo. So if you felt like that, you're in the right place. We're going to go over more techniques, and I can really help you recalibrate your nervous system. And that whole process of recalibrating your nervous system for love, compassion, and enlightenment instead of fear, guilt, and shame is the one-by-one process of recalling parts of yourself that you previously rejected. Like I rejected part of myself and kept fear in my soul with my fear all men wound, or my if I apologize, I fear that my loved ones will leave me wound. That's a lot of fear to keep inside myself. And all that fear was how I rejected myself. And that was the outcome of that. So if you resonate with that, I can tell you I've done it and I can help you do it as well. So let's go back to the presentation. And we're going to get to, I love Dr. Huberman. Okay. And Carl Jung. Let's listen to Dr. Huberman and then we'll get to the Carl Jung quote.
What we need to do is start to figure out how we can, I think, especially for the next generation of kids, how to teach them to regulate their nervous system so that they recognize that pulse of adrenaline as placing them in a compromised position. Like, we have to leverage the idea that being able to hear and listen hinges on the ability to be calm. So therefore, the ability to be calm is crucial to hearing and listening, and hearing and listening is crucial to our advancement as individuals and as groups. The problem is everyone's been trying to do this backwards. They've said we all have to get along. We have to cancel culture. We all have to, listen to one another. And I think, again, we have to start from the inside. We have to teach it physiologically. Now, I don't have a master plan on how to do that, but one of the reasons I'm here and one of the reasons I'm, teaching neuroscience on Instagram and not just in my laboratory is until we can learn to regulate the self, I don't think we're going to get where we want to go as a culture.
Until we learn to regulate the self. And he's right on point. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is talking about. We live in a holographic universe. So sure, I can stop people from talking about topics that I feel uncomfortable with, but canceling them does not transform my own wounds into wisdom. It doesn't stop me from getting triggered when someone else does it. And so when we approach life as, well, they made me feel uncomfortable, cancel, that's codependent. That's not grounded in reality. That's blaming other people for your emotional pain. Just like if I get triggered, oh, that person's selfish. Well, that's my soul showing me my own selfishness. And I know that's a very uncomfortable truth. And I've spent the last 10 years absorbing and acknowledging and integrating that truth all the way down. I call it pinky toe healing, all the way down to my pinky toe. And then it's fully integrated. But let's hear what Carl Jung has to say. There is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. To round itself out, life calls not for perfection, but for completeness. For this, the thorn in the flesh is needed, the suffering of defects, without which there is no progress and no ascent. We come here to improve ourselves. Our souls plan our lives based on our wounds for self-improvement opportunities. And understanding projection is when I project my own pain onto other people and I hold them accountable to my pain. Like you're selfish, and not understanding that I live in a holographic universe, that the universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. So every time you have a negative thought in your brain and your initial is to put it on somebody else, ask yourself, how does that apply to me? And be honest with yourself. And if you don't know immediately, write it down in a little notebook and come back to it later. But that's another free do-it-yourself trauma healing technique. Your soul is constantly showing you yourself through signs, synchronicities, and then internal dialogue. And the more you listen to that internal dialogue and learn to transform your wounds into wisdom, you will eventually shut down the internal terrorist. I used to have a terrorist in my head. It was about 9 months after I found the fear all men wound that I was able to silence the terrorist in my head. And I know people, oh yeah, I know the terrorist in my head, but that terrorist in your head is giving you a lot of useful information about yourself, not anybody else. So again, why Dr. Joe Dispenza said, remove all of your attention outside of yourself. Those are the projections. Remove your attention off of the outside world. Do a huge redirect back to self. and then start your internal process of turning your own emotional wounds into wisdom and see how your external reality changes. As Dr. Huberman said, cancel culture is doing it backwards. It starts with the self. Okay, why recalibrating one's nervous system is the healing process. So neuroscience, recalibrating the nervous system heals trauma by shifting the body from a chronic survival-based fight or flight state back to a state of safety, social engagement, and relaxation. This process uses neuroplasticity to rewire neural pathways and quiet an overactive brain. Right, so when our souls are emitting love, compassion, and enlightenment, and that's what our heart's communicating to our brain, then it gives the brain a chance to rest. But when my soul is fear, 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 and then fear, fear, fear up to my brain, okay, fight or flight, and there's the exhaustion. That was me for most of my life. I had 35 years of debilitating lower back pain from my childhood trauma. It started when I was 15 and a half. And that was my fear all men wound. So this process allows the brain to stop associating present environments with past dangers. And that's really the healing process, is that it's, okay, let go of the past and live in the present. But when we don't let go of the past, it gets triggered in the present. And that's one way I learned that triggers are my healing friend, not my healing foe. Carl Jung always says, what irritates us about others leads us to an understanding of ourselves. And, but when your nervous system shifts, your relationships shift, decision-making sharpens, business problems resolve, patterns dissolve, those unhealthy patterns, the failed relationships, the nonstop dating, like new person. And because you're no longer reacting from old wounds, you're not pulling your past into the present when you learn to let go of your past and to learn from your past. And that's what my free ebook really helps you do, is that self-reflection process. You are responding from new wisdom and knowledge unearthed from your soul. So our souls are born from the quantum field, and the quantum field has all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe. So your soul has all the wisdom and knowledge in the universe. It's up to you to learn how to unearth that, how to unveil that, how to show how powerful you are. And that's what I'm here to help you learn today. So let's get on to epigenetics. And epi means before, genetics, signifying what happens before our genetics are triggered. It teaches that less than 1% of our mental and physical diseases come from our genetics. The field is the sole governing agency of the particle, and Dr. Bruce Lipton has a great example of how that functions today.
Whatever picture you hold in your mind, the brain releases complementary chemistry that matches that picture, and it releases it into the body. And the chemistry of the blood is what controls the genes and the behavior. Children, when adopted into a family where there's cancer running in that family, the adopted child will get the same family cancer. But the point, the adopted child has totally different genetics. What was the point? It was being adopted into a family where the programming of that child is what caused the cancer. It's consciousness who releases the chemistry to the environment that controls the genes. And you can change your consciousness, and you can change your environment. And all of a sudden I said, oh my God, we were programmed to be victims. It turns out we are masters of our genetic activity. And this is the new science called epigenetics.
So Dr. Bruce Lipton is the one that taught me the field is the sole governing agency of a particle. I had joined a spiritual group, and he's friends with the leader of that group. So he came on a small, 20-person call and went over this. I'm like, oh, that's so helpful. I think that was in January of this year. And so learning all of that from him, because he's done so much work on epigenetics, and he also went over how our cells in our body have receptors for our own energy, not someone else's energy, but our own energy. And my receptors are different than your receptors, which are different from your mom's receptors, from your best friend's receptors, from your child's receptors. All of our receptors are different. They're all because all of our energy bodies are different. It's amazing. Okay. family medicine. We're about to get into Dr. Gabor Mate. And so, like Dr. Bruce Lipton was saying, that children who are adopted into families most often pick up the cancer from that family and not based on their own genetics, showing how important it is to take care of our energy fields, our souls, our energy bodies, and turn those wounds into wisdom, because when we have wounds, that will be mirrored inside of our bodies. You know, when I have a lot of shame, guilt, and fear, I almost died when I was 30 because I didn't take care of myself after my second child was born. I got bacterial pneumonia, became septic, and spent 2 weeks on a ventilator in ICU. I did not take care of myself. So this is what Dr. Gabor Mate would say about that. When people do not know how to say no to others in order to prioritize their own physiological needs, the body will say no for them in the form of disease, such as cancer. So my body said no for me in the form of bacterial sepsis and 2 weeks on a ventilator when my second child was 5 weeks old and my older child was 2.5. And my daughter took on a primal wound because of that, and so did my son. Mom's dead. I mean, how does an infant, when mom is nursing you, is just all of a sudden gone? And there, you know, and we live in the moment. So when I didn't care for myself, when I didn't engage in this love hierarchy, which is the second lesson in my free ebook, I was not taking care of myself and my children. I had prioritized money, that's the masculine lane, before the feminine lane, which is healing from giving birth and nursing my daughter in January. And I almost lost my life for it because I did not care for myself properly, did not engage in a healthy diet, did not plan ahead financially so I could stay at home to nurse my daughter, which was most important, and take care of myself. So, yeah, I had to learn my lessons the hard way, just like everybody else does. And here's a family medicine, and we're going to tie in Carl Jung, but let's listen to Dr. Gabor Mate, where he gets into what's important in childhood and what happens when we don't prioritize what's important.
What happens to a child where the attachment need is not compatible with the need for authenticity? In other words, if I'm authentic, my parents will reject me. If I feel what I feel and express what I feel and insist on my own truth, my parents can't handle it. And parents convey those messages unconsciously all the time. Not because they mean to, not because they don't love the child, not because they're not trying to do their best, but because they themselves are suppressed, or traumatized, or hurt, or stressed. And what does the child do with that? Well, if I give up my attachment for the sake of authenticity, I lose my relationship so much my life depends. Therefore, there's no question. What becomes suppressed is our authenticity, our emotions. And then we become 25 and 30 or 35, 40, and we don't know who we are.
Right. And that was me my whole life, my loneliness. And Carl Jung expresses it, really perfectly. Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself, or from holding certain views that others find inadmissible. That was my childhood. I'm very perceptive and I'm very direct, but my mom was an alcoholic, my dad was a workaholic, and that was very uncomfortable for them. So, okay, silence carry. And as I showed you earlier, I rejected my whole heart for most of my life until the past 10 years because I internalized my own parents' self-rejection. Because my parents did not know how to regulate their own nervous system, they blamed me for their problems, lack of self-awareness. They were not aware that we live in a holographic universe. They were not aware that when they got triggered because I was being a healthy child, that they were wrong and not me. That's how they were raised. So it's up to us to understand how generational trauma impacts families. And it's up to us that we have this awareness now to make these changes now that we understand the challenges that we're facing. And one of my teachings in my free ebook is changing the world as an inside job. The highest vibrating frequency is the most transformative. That's why enlightenment vibrates so high, and it's the most transformative. It's part of our healthy emotional range. So that's why spending time in my energy, in my ebook, my YouTube channel, we'll go over that in a minute, or this webinar, I teach it every Saturday, will naturally help bring your emotional pain to the surface as your soul naturally aligns with my higher vibrating soul. I'm in out of enlightenment a couple times a week. I had a massive enlightenment experience on Thursday, and I'm still kind of exhausted from it. But all of that helps myself and also naturally benefits you as well. So Carl Jung, he's just my favorite. And this is the quote. My kids are really worried about me after I experienced enlightenment for the first time. And when I found this quote, I was finally able to explain to them. One does not become enlightened by imagining beings of light, but by making their darkness conscious. And that's what I had to learn to do. When I experienced enlightenment the first time, I was shown profound wisdom about how when we give creation to a masculine God, we repress the feminine. But when we restore the divine feminine as equal to the divine masculine, and we mirror that in the home, then women will be valued as the emotional center of the home, also the spiritual center, because our souls are spiritual, communicate via emotions. So the emotional center and the spiritual center are the same. Hence the Cherokee proverb quote, a woman's highest calling is to connect a man to his soul so he can unite with source. A man's highest calling is to protect a woman so she can walk the earth unharmed. And so as we learn what is a healthy woman and what is a healthy man, and that if that's mirrored from the spiritual realm, then I think we'll all be better off for it. And so talking about projection, my second and third heroes in my book. So in my book, I refer to all the men as my heroes because they mirrored my wounds back to me and gave me huge opportunities to see where I was not valuing myself. And Andrew Tate, yes, I'm talking about Andrew Tate out of Romania. I had a personal relationship with his best friend, Justin Waller. So in June of 2022, my first hero in my book had left yoga with his, he had a close relationship with a yoga instructor who was also a dominatrix. And then after he left, I had questions about male sexuality. So my intuition guided me to reach out to Justin Waller, who I had seen on a podcast, the Fresh and Fit podcast. So in June of 2022, 2 months before Andrew's takedown started, and I had no idea that was coming. I wasn't even thinking about Andrew Tate when I reached out to Justin. But I reached out to him. He got back to me within an hour with a voice message, and we started texting. And then after Andrew's takedown started, I reached out to Justin, and I had an opportunity to help both of them with my shamanic gifts, which, like, why was I chosen for that? That's way before I realized who I am, or I finally accepted who I am. And right before I started helping to Fire Academy instructors. But let's get into this quote and see how this quote can help you about projection and Carl Jung and further supporting that we live in a holographic universe. If you imagine someone who is brave enough to withdraw all of his projections, then you might get an individual who is conscious of a pretty thick shadow. Such a man has saddled himself with new problems and conflicts. He has become a serious problem to himself, as he is now unable to say that they do this or that they are wrong, and they must be fought against. Such a man knows that whatever is wrong with the world is in himself. And if he only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world. He has succeeded in shouldering at least an infinitesimal part of the gigantic unsolved social problems of our day. So if you or your friends get really triggered by Andrew Tate, that triggering your emotional pain to the surface, that energetic, that vibrational match, like I showed you in the 2-prong experiment, is showing you yourself. Do you have a fear of men? Do you have a rape wound? I put Andrew Tate in a lineup with the fire department, and then my guy from my childhood, JC, is former FBI, currently the head of global security at GoDaddy. and I put them all in a lineup with Andrew Tate. It's very uncomfortable, but I had to call a spade a spade. I had to see myself. Why had I attracted so many men into my life who had other women right in front of me? Right in front of me. I mean, the 2 fire academy instructors, one was 6'4", looked like Superman. He was younger. He seemed to be having relationships with 2 married yoga instructors. And then the last one was a few years older than me, almost 60, but like 6'7", full head of like silver fox, did handstands and splits at yoga. And he seemed to be having a relationship with a 30-year-old yoga instructor while married. And we're all blaming Andrew Tate like he's the only one with multiple women. So I encourage us all to think about that, about what we're all accepting into our lives, the relationships that we're getting into, and why are we at population collapse? Why children are doing so poorly? Why our schools are failing? I'm a mother. I'm a matriarch now. These are things that I think about, and we're all in this together. So how can we co-create heaven on earth? We live in a holographic universe. So in a holographic universe, where is heaven? Well, it starts at the projection point, and our projections come out of our hearts, out of our vortex. So if what I'm projecting out of my heart is fear, guilt, and shame, then, I'm not creating heaven on earth. But when I project love, compassion, and enlightenment, then that's when I start creating heaven on earth. So Carl Jung's best DIY trauma healing technique. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes for this. Please make sure you have your mirror or your camera, because the camera on your phone, because you can look at yourself through that, a journal, and a pen. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to look at yourself and just hold up that mirror, and whatever comes out of, whatever is in your head, write it down. If it's about someone else, redirect it back to you. Well, my mom is selfish. Okay, how have I been selfish? Everything is a redirect back to self. We live in a holographic universe. So I'm going to start my timer for 5 minutes, and then we'll get going. Okay. Let's get going on my 6 divine feminine self-love strategies and how you can use them in your life and use them together to transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom. So it's not a belief system. It's a soul operation system. And each strategy addresses a different layer of internal experience. You'll experience emotional safety, self-orientation, wisdom extraction, energetic movement, nervous system integration, and real-world application. Together, they recalibrate the nervous system and expand your emotional range so you can be more grounded in yourself and respond to situation in a more mature, emotionally balanced way, like Dr. Huberman was talking about. So the first one, appreciate, learn, and forgive equals ego death. So how I came up with these strategies is I just looked at what was I doing and what worked. Additionally, I helped 2 fire academy instructors, so I have a focus on first responders and military. My ex-husband is former Israeli Defense Force, Special Forces. My guy from my childhood, his alma mater is the United States Air Force Academy. And so I really would love to help those men with their emotional, mental health challenges. But I realized that when I learned to appreciate my challenges, that gratitude is very healthy. So when I appreciated or felt gratitude, that opens my heart and reduces stress. So when my soul feels gratitude, my heart communicates gratitude for my brain. That naturally reduces cortisol. I feel safer inside myself because my soul isn't communicating fear all the time, reduces stress. And then I feel safer inside of my body. So first, create safety. Reduce stress, open your heart with gratitude, with appreciation. And then that's the right brain, the feminine, the emotion, the sentiment. Then it moves to your left brain, the learning. Okay. How can you transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom, like fear all men? That's not logical, right? Transform that into men protect me. Sure, some men should be feared, but the vast majority protect me. So first I engage my right brain, the feminine, and then I engage my left brain, and there's the wholeness that Carl Jung is talking about, that we're going to see in the Lakota star feeding exercise, that what Johns Hopkins found out. And talk therapy typically engages only the feminine, the communication, not the masculine, the action or the logic. And so that's one reason talk therapy doesn't have the results that the Lakota star feeding ritual does. It's important to engage both sides of the brain, both the feminine, the communication, the gratitude, the appreciation, the sentiment, and then learn your lessons through analysis, the left side of the brain. And what I learned is once I extract the wisdom out of the wound, forgiveness for self and others just naturally flows. And also I learned that when I have a problem, I'm either not grateful for my challenge, I haven't learned my lesson, or I haven't forgiven everyone involved. And since my soul plans my life for me based on my wounds for self-improvement opportunities, where's the regret and the remorse? If I don't like my life, I file a grievance with my soul. We live in a holographic universe. When you have problems in your life, the only person that can get in your way is you. You heard the saying, no one's coming to save you. And then when you fully accept that and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it yourself, then that's where you have your self-honor and pride. And wow, I did it myself and I learned so much and I'm so much better off for it. Yeah. No one's coming to save you. All right, number 2, the love hierarchy. And so what I mean by self-love is your healthy diet, healthy exercise, healthy sleep, give yourself permission to rest. This kind of health, prescribe nature therapy to yourself. And worldwide, doctors are prescribing nature therapy, and they're seeing that nature therapy works far better than psychiatric medications like SSRIs. SSRIs just repress your ability to feel your emotions. They don't teach you how to transform your emotional wounds into personal wisdom. But when you go out in nature, as we saw with the heart is a vortex, your energy body goes 6 feet out from you and is designed to connect to the sun and connect to the earth. And all those free radicals on the earth naturally lower inflammation in the body. You can, Google it. What's the physiological benefit of walking barefoot in nature? Grounding. Tons of physiological benefits. And for men, because men and women are opposites, we're complementary, like the Cherokee proverb showed us. So when men, like the most testosterone producing, cortisol reducing activity for men is chopping wood. And then if you want to add in the feminine, yell out your emotional challenges. And there you have the action, the masculine, and the communication, the feminine. And that's how you create wholeness and coherence inside of your nervous system, inside of your soul. So if you start with the self and you fill up your own cup of love, then when you have overflow from that cup in a healthy environment, then you pour onto others from the overflow. But if you pour from inside the cup, then you're giving away parts of yourself when you haven't even figured out how to care for yourself fully. Such as if I have one pair of shoes and I see someone without shoes and then I offer them my one pair of shoes, am I pouring from the overflow or am I pouring from the inside? Because I'd argue that I'm pouring from the inside and that's not healthy, but a lot of people pour from the inside. And I used to put community before self. I put everybody before myself before I healed. I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand that my soul, my subconscious, had a wound that I'm the problem. So when my soul had a wound that I'm the problem from my childhood trauma, why would I want to spend time with myself? So I would just give to everybody else in the hopes that they will see how good I am and then want to spend time with me. But that's not how it works in a holographic universe. We attract what we are in a holographic universe through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match to see ourselves, like we saw in that 2-prong experiment. When both of the prongs are calibrated to the same frequency, that's when one moves and the other one moves, can see itself. But when they're calibrated to different frequencies, they don't even notice each other. So first fill up your own cup of love and then have overflow. And then pour from that overflow onto your partner. And the self and the partner comes first, because when you have children inside of a healthy relationship where both parents have figured out their challenges, have a strong center, a strong sense of self, a strong connection to self, a secure attachment to self, which is mental health, then children are raised in a self environment, a healthy environment, and then pour onto family and then community. But a lot of what is taught to children right now is to pour on the community before pouring on themselves, which is one reason we have 5-year-olds protesting against ICE. 5-year-olds are still learning how to love themselves. Giving them, overburdening them with community responsibility is something I would encourage us all to self-reflect on. Learning to surf the waves of life. There's a physics experiment we're going to watch in a second. But if any of the physics experiments help me accept why my life was so challenging and why it was necessary, it's this one. And when I accepted late last year that life is like jumping on a trampoline, the deeper you go, the higher you fly based on the laws of physics. I was like, oh, well, that's why my childhood was so hard. And that's why I had to attempt suicide, because my soul had a plan for me to expand my emotional range to include enlightenment. That's about the highest you can fly, right? But if I'm on a trampoline and I only jump in a little, then I'm only going to fly a little. But if I'm going to jump super deep, then I'm going to fly super high. Such as if you want to climb Mount Everest, and I've been to the Mount Everest base camp in Tibet. That's where I met my ex-husband, who's Israeli. I've seen how high it is. At 18,000 feet, I could barely walk, let alone get up another 10,000 feet. So if you want to climb Mount Everest, you have to go really deep inside of yourself and pull out a ton more self-belief and self-confidence, a huge preparation. And that's just how it works. If you want Mount Everest-sized wisdom, you have to take on Mount Everest-sized wounds. So if you have Mount Everest-sized wounds, like a really traumatic childhood, then your soul is giving you an opportunity to turn that amount of wounds into that amount of wisdom. And that's what my free ebook and methods can teach you how to do. So the depth of the wound determines the height of the wisdom. And our souls plan our lives based on our wounds for self-improvement opportunities. Let's watch this physics experiment and see how this works.
And it's high science. I want to go back and revisit the high road, low road track. Now, I did a previous video on this, and I had so many questions and comments, I thought it would be worthwhile to go back and do a few more demonstrations on it and take a closer look. Now, this is a classic physics problem where we have two tracks that start at the same position and end at the same position, but their path from one side to the other is completely different. Now, these balls are able to roll down the tracks, so the question is, if I were to release them simultaneously, which track would get the ball to the opposite side the quickest? Well, let's give it a try. So the shortest distance between 2 points is not necessarily the fastest. Now, what's going on here? Well, we're giving both balls potential energy by lifting them up to a certain position. When I release them, only a small amount of its potential energy is changed into kinetic on this track, so its speed across the track isn't very high. However, on the low road track, I started out at that high position, it drops down, changes that potential energy into kinetic, but then it drops an additional distance, so more potential energy is changed to kinetic, so it's going to cover this distance at a higher speed.
Oh, sorry. There. Okay, so why is this physics experiment so important? And what does it show us? Most of my life, I was on the parallel track. I didn't know how to go surrender to my fear, guilt, and shame. The feminine is surrender to the emotions, to gain that kinetic moment, the energy, that propulsion, the momentum to climb my next mountaintop. I didn't know how to do that. So I just stayed stuck going flat and parallel in my fear, guilt, and shame. 10 years ago, when my mom passed away on my 45th birthday, is when I started to see shamans and open to the fact that I needed to heal from my childhood wounds, that it was time. And I started to learn how to go into my pain and then come out of my pain. So the first time I really did it on my own was 2 years after I started healing. And that's when my youngest daughter, I have a boy and then 2 girls, we got in an argument and I was wrong and I needed to apologize. And it wouldn't come out of me. So I got off the phone with her and I asked myself, why can't I apologize to my youngest daughter? And this is what I heard. You believe that if you apologize, your loved ones will leave you. And this is where I learned my lesson. I'm like, well, that's not logical. If I apologize, my loved ones will want to stay in a healthy relationship. Oh, okay. So I let go of that subconscious lie that was fueling most of my life until I was 47 years old. Then after that point, every time I made a mistake, I'm human like everybody else. Everybody makes mistakes. The apology would just come out of my mouth in a healthy way, and I never had problems with it again. But until I learned to surrender into my fear, guilt, and shame, and then, learn that wisdom, I wasn't capable, but it wasn't time yet. Right before I healed my lower back pain, when I had my first conversation with my first hero in the book, I received wisdom a couple months earlier that pain is beautiful because it reveals what longs to be healed. And when we create wholeness inside of ourselves, the feminine, the masculine, we accept that our pain is there to teach us lessons. Because if life is convenient and not painful, why change? We only change when life is hard. That's why we need the pain as the catalyst for change. But there's the opportunity for wholeness. Turn the pain into purpose, right? Turn your pain into purpose. The universe is a mirror. We went over this a little bit ago when we saw the 2-prong experiment, but wisdom says the universe is a mirror showing me myself in every moment as a constant feedback loop for self-improvement. Knowledge says we attract what we are through energetic resonance, meaning a vibrational match. And this is one of the main ways that I learned that when something's true, it's true in multiple places. Like the wisdom and the knowledge here are born of the same truth, just expressed differently. One expressed through wisdom and one expressed through knowledge, wisdom being feminine, knowledge being masculine. Changing the world is an inside job. Well, in a holographic universe, we can change the projection. We have to ask ourselves, where does the projection come from? Well, that comes from our soul out through our hearts. Your external reality is a reflection of your internal reality. When my house is a mess, my internal world is equally a mess. But when my house is clean like it is now, it's because my internal reality is clean. Your external experience is shaped by the wounds and wisdom stored in your nervous system and your soul. How you feel about yourself is projected externally and determines what you notice, perceive, and attract into your life. That's why we all create our own reality. And I went over that with Justin and Andrew. Like, why did Andrew create the reality where he was canceled on social media and had his payment processing center disconnected and then got thrown in solitary confinement? Why did his soul create that reality for him? And, he needs to answer that. And so I'm going to show you the physics experiment in a second that shows how this works, that changing the world is an inside job. But your soul naturally aligns with the highest vibrating energy or emotion. And so, but that's laws of physics. Energy naturally aligns with the highest vibrating energy. So that's why when I experience enlightenment every week or a few times a week, and I communicate that out to all souls, that naturally helps all other souls vibrate higher. So when you do the work, the same thing happens. Wisdom carries a higher frequency than a wound. Really, and then when that happens, your relationships improve, your decisions become clearer, and pressure is handled without collapse. A holographic universe mandates that internal change happen prior to noticing external change. So you work on yourself, and then you have a different projection. When you have a different projection, you have a different external reality. So here is the 5 metronome experiment. And we're going to see that metronome 2 and 3 are going the fastest. And when they go the fastest, the other 3 naturally align. So let's watch this. So you see, they all start to naturally align, just like the heart cells did in the embryo. And the last one, pain is an initiation process to personal growth. We are souls having a human experience. We're multi-dimensional divine beings. We're not here to get punished. We're here to learn how to regulate our emotions, how to express healthy emotions out of our hearts as an adult and expand our emotional range. And when we expand our emotional range, we naturally reveal more wisdom and knowledge out of our souls. So it happens when something challenges you and you're forced to meet yourself honestly. Pain. I had 35 years of debilitating lower back pain screaming at me from my childhood rape wounds, and I didn't know how to listen until I started learning at 45 years old. Difficulty isn't punishment, it's what builds resilience. And you can see it neurologically, that when we learn how to process our emotions and not just repress them, that's how we build emotional maturity, resilience. Initiation is simply learning how to move through challenge without collapsing, avoiding, or turning against yourself. That's how maturity forms. That's the final skill. And when you spend time using my ebook on my YouTube channel, which I'll show you in a minute, or reading my book or having a private session with me, all of the work that I've done in my soul will naturally help you. Like there's the wisdom that says you are the summary of the 5 people you hang around most. Well, when you make me one of those 5 people through those various avenues, then I can help you more. So here are self-care strategies that I've used that I recommend for you. Learn Reiki. Every time I went to a Reiki weekend, I'm a Reiki master, I'm a Karuna Reiki master. Karuna Reiki is feminine Reiki. I also learned Reiki drumming to go with my shamanic drumming. I would let go of a lot of emotional pain. I would cry. One time I almost threw up because I was moving so much inside of myself. So learn Reiki, and then you can do it on yourself. You can do it on others. Exercise, and for male and female specific. So for women, the most kind of feminine hormone producing, cortisol reducing activities are walking and gentle yoga. So Google what's good for you. A healthy diet. Establish a healthy diet for yourself. Walk barefoot in nature. And establish a gratitude practice. You can look on YouTube for meditations. You can Google other gratitude practices, but just start by being grateful for your house, for the birds outside, for the animals, for your clothes, for your family members. When you journal, at the top, write down 3 things you're grateful for and then journal. There's a lot of ways you can establish a gratitude practice in 1 or 2 minutes a day. And just the more that your soul is focused on gratitude, then the less your soul is focused on fear, guilt, and shame. And you're working on transforming your emotional wounds into personal wisdom. So meditation and shamanic drumming. So I'm going to show you a video on my YouTube channel in a second, but here's the benefits. You can use my free ebook. The meditation and shamanic drumming video is free as well. I understand that things are tight. Finances are tight. I get that. So what are the benefits of meditation? You go from fight or flight into rest and digest. Why is that so important? Digest. Our mental health is 90% created inside of our gut. That's why the throwing up when we're processing our wounds helps us move all this energy. So when you're in rest and digest, then your digestion system is healthy. It's not inflamed, doesn't have an abundance of cortisol in it. But when you're in fight or flight and you're producing all that cortisol and all that excess sugar, then your digestive tract is not doing as well. Improved heart rate variability and emotional regulation. You're going to lower your blood pressure. It's going to reduce cortisol, which reduces inflammation. You'll have improved emotional stability and cognitive function. Drumming benefits. It helps you go to your theta brainwave for creativity and insight. That's meditation, takes you there as well. And that 4-beat drum, boom, 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 boom. It creates coherence and structure in the nervous system and helps you feel safe so you can let go and open yourself to your heart and your emotions. Nervous system regulation by inducing rhythmic entrainment with the beat, which is what I just described. The entrainment is you let go of yourself and you trust the structure of the 4 beats. Helps access memory networks to release emotional pain and reduce pain by releasing natural opiates. So how that works is, like we heard from Dr. Gabor Mate about attachment and authenticity. When children have to repress authenticity in a traumatic situation, like I was in with a lot of generational trauma, then they repress the body's natural ability to release endorphins. And endorphins are the body's opiate. So when the body and the amygdala, when the amygdala is overstressed because of a traumatic childhood, it starts to shut down and it doesn't release opiates. So that's why we look outside ourselves for opiates like drugs or porn or alcohol or any other number of what we could call soothing techniques, so to speak. But when we have a healthy attachment to self and we can express ourselves, we have a secure attachment to self, we've done the work, then we don't look for opiates outside of ourself. So here's my YouTube. It's The Divine Feminine. And at the top, you'll see it's pinned as my meditation shamanic drumming video. You can listen to that as many times as you want all day long. And then I have all kinds of other videos about healing and posts, and you can, about my history. I primarily focus on how to heal from your childhood wounds, but I also go into my history and where I came from, and you guys can check that out there. But the vast majority are educational videos about how to self-reflect, healing tips, and I also have some spiritual humor. And so here's the Lakota DIY trauma healing technique, the star feeding technique. And so what they did is that they take people out into nature and gather the stones representing pain. And then you carry those stones to a river and release them one by one while speaking the memory of your pain out loud to the water. So your throwing is the action, the speaking is the feminine. The action's the masculine, the speaking's the feminine. And then you keep the final stone as a reminder that grief was witnessed, not erased. And you can do this over and over as many times as you need to. You can also do it if you want to write your pain onto a piece of paper and then burn it in a fire. Whatever you do, just make sure you're doing feminine expression, communication, and masculine action, and that's how you create wholeness inside of yourself. Okay, so why work with me? I do trauma healing and enlightenment coaching. And remember, you're the summary of the five people you surround yourself with. Now you can, work with me in other ways. You have your free ebook, you have my book on Amazon, you have my YouTube channel, my website. But if you want to do more of a deep dive with me, and I can teach you how to do pattern recognition inside of your own dysfunctional patterns, I'm going to get to that in a second. But you will benefit from my regular enlightenment experiences, which are weekly. You will receive the wisdom and knowledge gained from my 10 years of personal healing work. And my methods save money in the long run. My focus is to teach you how to do it yourself so you don't need me over the long run. And you will become independent in your emotional processing, and you can share that with your loved ones. So if you felt resonance during this training, it wasn't emotion. It was that alignment between what's vibrating in your soul and what's vibrating in my soul. That was nervous system alignment called resonance, also soul level alignment called resonance. That's how you know this is relevant without needing convincing. So what's included in a private session? We do meditation, we'll do shamanic and Reiki drumming, and you're going to learn how to interact with your shadow, interact with your wounds to recalibrate your nervous system, recalibrate your soul. And then you can apply these strategies to your specific internal blocks. We'll go over how to do that specific to you. And then you'll receive a video recording of your session for ongoing use. So you can refer back to what we talked about, the meditation, the drumming that I did specifically for you. And also, every time you make a purchase, with every purchase, you can give a free 2-hour session to any first responder or military person, someone you know or someone you don't know. Go down to the local fire department, go to the police station. I can help these men. And right now, there's an epidemic of mental health with our first responders and our military. 2% of the American population are first responders, but they account for 20% of the suicides. And then who finds them? Other first responders. So please help me help them. And when you make a purchase, you can give away a free 2-hour session. After you do the purchase, then we can talk about that over email. So here is my, for individual sessions, I have a 3-tiered pricing. The top tier is a 2-hour deep insight session and a 2-hour integration session. It's 4 hours with me. Now, if we do 2 deep insight, we can, or 2 integration, we can. We're going to do what's ever best for you. And those 2 sessions are $2,997. 1 2-hour pattern recognition session is $1,997. And then one 1-hour pattern recognition session is $1,297. And what I've learned is that people do not need a lot of appointments with me. When I give intuitive feedback, they need 6 months, maybe a year to process all that and then come back around. I do not create dependence with my clients. I create independence. My goal is the least number of sessions necessary. If you don't even need a session, cool, great. I'm going to go on to the people who need more help, like the first responders. But if you need a session, this is my prices, and then you give a free session away to a first responder or someone in the military as well. So here is the QR code for the 2-hour deep insight session and a 2-hour integration session for $2,997. And when you click on this QR code, the package will come up and you'll be able to book your first session, and then we'll continue communicating via email. I'll just leave it up for a second while you make your decision. And if you have any questions, well, we're almost at the end, and I don't have any other appointments today, so I can ask we could go over any questions that you have. And here's the QR code if you're interested in a 2-hour pattern recognition session for $1,997. So here is the QR code for the 2-hour pattern recognition session. And then here is the QR code for the 1-hour pattern recognition session for $1,297. So in that one, we also do meditation and drumming. We just have about 40 minutes after that to discuss what patterns came up and what you were shown during the drumming. All right. Then my book on Amazon. So if you're not ready to get a session yet, but you'd like to check me out further, my book is on Amazon. It's well reviewed. Last time I looked, I had 16 reviews at 4.9 stars. And all the men in my book, they are reflective tools, and I don't disparage them or talk negatively about them. So let me back it up one more time. Everybody, one more chance to, if you're interested in the package, the 2-hour deep insight session and the 2-hour integration session for $2,997, then that's the QR code. And you'll all get a recording of this session, and you can also reach out to me. I'll put up my email in the chat. It's support@carrieblazer.com. That's on my website and my YouTube channel. And this is the QR code for the 2-hour pattern recognition session for $1,997. And the third tier, the 1-hour pattern recognition session for $1,297, if you're interested in that. Okay, if you're still thinking about it, if you're like, gosh, I would like to talk to Carrie privately, here you can use this QR code to book a 15-minute call, and we're going to discuss what needs to happen to make the situation work out perfectly for us both. Like, how can we be aligned? So definitely take advantage of that. If you're not comfortable asking me your questions, like I'm going to get with Rachel in a second here and answer her questions about the Carl Jung mirror exercise. So feel free to use that and book a 15-minute call. You'll also get an email this week giving you another opportunity for this call. And every Thursday, starting this Thursday, I'm starting a live show on my YouTube channel, and you can check that out as well.